Come on. Come on. Think you can go further? Gotcha!
11 badass superheroes who are Batman clones. We certainly don't need an introduction to establish the popularity and madness behind Batman. He has been one of the most favorite superhero characters for the fans, one who could be related to and respected for the trauma he experienced. His vulnerability made him appealing, and his style statement, cool outfits and gadgets, made him a character that still commands the same kind of love as it did all those years ago. In the comic book universe, we have often observed the tendency to reap someone else's rewards. Almost every super popular character has a near similar replica who was modeled simply to capture the fancy of the fans and enjoy a share in the thriving popularity of the main character. Batman was no exception. And over the years, there have been several Batman clones who had multiple features similar to the Caped Crusader. It would be a stretch to say that all of them were super cool, but some certainly made their presence felt. In this video, we will take you through some of these underrated superheroes who have some uncanny similarities with the Dark Knight, probably because they were modeled after him. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Night Thrasher. The Night Thrasher has an origin story that might sound surprisingly similar to many of you Batman fans out there. His real name was Dwayne Taylor, and his parents were killed in front of his eyes. It was orchestrated by a sorceress named Ty, and she confused Dwayne's memories regarding the incident. He remembered that his parents were killed, but could not recall who killed them. The sorceress made one of her accomplices, Andrew Cord, kill his parents, but thereafter, they were the ones who used the desire for revenge in Dwayne's heart. They turned him into a crime fighter, and while Ty and Cord looked after his father's company, he trained harder to master his work. In the course of his action, he met two other vigilante fighters, Silhouette and Midnight's Fire, who were keen to put an end to all criminal activities around them. The Night Thrasher had numerous complicated situations ahead of him, and his conflicted past often came in the way of his duties. He did take on some important villains like Juggernaut, and helped the mighty Thor in one of his missions. He is skilled in martial arts, has an interesting armory of gadgets just like Batman, and his combat skills are always shown to be improving with time. The Night Thrasher has to deal with the crucial twist in his life when he learns that his very guardians were the actual killers of his parents. In fact, one of his story arcs even explores his evil version and how he struggled with his identity. This character might be relatively underrated, but we can assure you that it is definitely worth checking out. Moon Knight. The beginning of Moon Knight's career might not have been very similar to Batman's, but his methods certainly are. He started out as Mark Spector, a dreaded mercenary who was left for dead in a desert during one of his missions. The moon god Khonshu revived him, and he was appointed as his high priest and the crime-fighting vigilante, the Moon Knight. His purpose is to enforce justice and protect those who are vulnerable. The Moon Knight specializes in hand-to-hand combat, various weapons, and he also has an extreme level of pain resistance. As a child, he watched his father being bullied for being a rabbi, and he was always there to defend him. His father did not approve of his violent ways, but that did not stop him from joining the U.S. Marine Corps. He developed certain psychological issues from an early age, and after being dishonorably discharged from the Army, he joined the CIA. From there, he went on to become a mercenary, and the near-death experience in the desert changed his life completely. After becoming the Moon Knight, he moved to New York, and he developed a unique costume to go with his array of equipment. His fighting style can be compared to Batman, and his mysterious aura will also remind you of the Dark Knight. However, because of divine intervention, he does have certain superpowers like an enhanced brain, immortality, and many others. He has always fought crime as a solitary hero, but some of his friends worked as informants, such as his best friend, Frenchie. The Moon Knight, however, is troubled by some serious psychological issues, and his dissociative identity disorder often gets in the way of his actions. He has some alters, like a cab driver named Jake Lockley and a millionaire, Stephen Grant. The Punisher. This violent vigilante from Marvel Comics might have swayed on both sides of good and evil, but his similarities with Batman are undeniable. He was actually never meant to be a hero, and you could see him more as a selfish vigilante who would do anything to continue his crusade, even if it meant putting others at risk. The Punisher, or Frank Castle, is the perfect anti-hero, and he has appeared as a villain for Spider-Man. His other memorable run-ins include the likes of Captain America, Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Wolverine, and the Nightcrawler. Formerly, Frank Castle was a part of the Marine Black Ops, and his duty was to deal with high-value targets. Just like Batman witnessed a terrible personal tragedy in the form of his parents being murdered, Frank Castle came back from a mission to learn that his family had been killed. He vowed to track down those responsible for the murders and decided to avenge their deaths all by himself. While the Batman has a moral obligation to not kill anyone, the Punisher doesn't bind himself by any such rules, and he has killed countless characters in the course of time. He has some brutal ways of killing his enemies, and does not shy away from torturing them ruthlessly if he feels the need. Being a military veteran, his combat skills and weapons training are top-notch, and his stealthy moves will certainly bring back memories of Batman. He does possess some angelic powers after being resurrected, but his strong control over his mind is still one of his greatest assets. This underrated character is a perfect mix of good and evil, but his mysterious ways of working certainly will leave a mark on the fans who love Batman. Shadowhawk. Shadowhawk is another notable anti-hero character who has been framed in the same vein as Batman. It has been revealed that there have been multiple Shadowhawks over the years, and it is basically a mantle given to those who become the host to a mystical force known as the Spirit of Justice. Two notable individuals who took up the responsibility were Paul Johnstone and Eddie Collins after him. He also has a tragic origin story where he gets wrongfully injected with the HIV virus. Since then, he swears to fight against all forms of oppression against innocent victims. He even developed an exoskeleton, which could act as his armored suit during his crime-fighting missions. After his death, Eddie Collins slipped into the role, and it kept changing hands, with the responsibilities remaining the same. It was revealed that the very first Shadowhawk was actually an Egyptian shaman, and he was killed in a meditative state with the Nomo, the gods of thought and mind. It was then decided that the soul giver would inhabit several others to collect their souls and eventually reincarnate the shaman. The Silver Age Shadowhawk probably bears the most similarities with Batman because he was a millionaire who used his wealth to be a crime-fighting vigilante. The special power of all the Shadowhawks was the Spirit of Justice, which increased their strength, speed, and other skills. Some went on to create a fighting suit for themselves, which helped them even further. Paul Johnstone, for instance, used some particularly violent methods to take down his enemies, and he would fracture the spinal columns of the baddies with his bare hands. When his strength deteriorated due to the HIV virus, he resorted more and more to his equipment and armor. Overall, the Shadowhawk was quite an iconic character, and it surely deserves more attention from the Batman fans. Bibleman. Bibleman is a relatively lesser-known superhero from an animated series that was created to teach children about basic Christian values. However, the viewers were quick to draw parallels to the Batman for some striking similarities. Two people have been shown to play the role of Bibleman, and they both have very different origin stories. The first one is Miles Peterson, who was a wealthy and successful man from the higher segment of society. However, he was still frustrated because he felt that something was missing from his life. He gave up on life as his frustration increased with time, and just as he had given up all hope, he found a Bible that changed his life. He had a renewed faith and enthusiasm, and he fought all forms of evil that he encountered. After Miles Peterson retired from his Bibleman duties, Josh Carpenter was the one to step into his shoes. This was a young boy who was still unsure about the relevance of God in the Bible. After he acknowledged the need for God in his life, he grew up to be a righteous hero who became the second Bibleman. You might say that Miles Peterson had more in common with the Batman in terms of personality, but the fighting style of both the Bibleman characters will remind you of the Caped Crusader. Both Biblemen possessed the Sword of the Spirit, which they used to fight the evil forces. They wore the armor of God, and the original Bibleman even had a hideout cave called the Bible Cave. Even the sidekicks bring back memories of Robin and Catwoman at times. This character might not have been outrageously popular, but there were certain aspects about Bibleman that made the fans appreciate the unique superhero. The Fixer. Those who are aware of the history behind Frank Miller's comic book Holy Terror will know that the initial plan was to have Batman as the protagonist. The idea was to pit him against a modern threat, and after the 9/11 Batman versus notorious terrorist Osama seemed to be an interesting concept. However, DC was hesitant to go ahead with the plan, and eventually Frank Miller went ahead with the character of the Fixer. This is a close shadow of Batman, who looks similar in many ways, and even has a thinly veiled Catwoman-like character. You will also find a Jim Gordon replacement character in the storyline. The Fixer is basically a costumed vigilante who fights Islamic terrorists and can go to great lengths to protect the lives of innocent people. However, the comic book did come under some criticism for some of the political aspects. It was supposed to be Batman protecting Gotham City from the terrorist organization, and this was the second best thing that Frank Miller could put up. Finally, all criticisms and controversies aside, we have to say that the Fixer missed the mark quite a bit with his merciless methods at times. Batman is such a well-loved superhero because of his humanity and sense of justice, but the Fixer often tortures and kills dozens of people. Such fundamental contradictions aside, it is certainly a unique take on Batman after the writer wasn't allowed to use said character.
My goal is the same as yours, to rid the world of evil.
Nighthawk. The toughest of backgrounds create the strongest of characters, which in turn translate into the most powerful superheroes. Such was the idea with Nighthawk from the very beginning, and he started his life as a spoiled brat named Kyle Richmond. Rich he was indeed, courtesy of his supremely wealthy father, who was always away for business purposes. He lost his mother very early in life, and grew up having a troubled childhood where he was often bullied. Later, he grew arrogant because of his immense wealth, and it all changed when he was a young adult and had a drunken accident. His girlfriend, Mindy Williams, was crippled because of the accident, and even though his father tried to use his wealth to protect his son, he still got kicked out of school. Kyle tried to join the army to find some purpose in life, but he was rejected because of a heart murmur. He then trained his body rigorously, and after the death of his father, he became the sole heir of all the wealth in the family. He was never told that his girlfriend was still alive because his father had sent her away, and Nighthawk soon became the gallant warrior who fought crime. He even aided Spider-Man in one of his missions, and some of his story arcs do share uncanny similarities with Batman, as if the personal life and personality weren't enough. Nighthawk had superhuman strength because of an alchemical potion, and his superpowers were further potent at night. Besides these, he was a skilled fighter and became an expert in occult matters. He also had some interesting equipment, such as his jet-powered artificial wings, which allowed him to fly through the air at great speeds. These wings are extremely durable, and it also shields him from enemy attacks. He has some other equipment as well to help him in his fights, and also uses talons on his gloves to cut through any material. The Nighthawk certainly had the potential to be a greater character had it been explored better, but it might still be worth reading for the Batman fans.
You were right. What you told me over the radio that night.
Daredevil. Daredevil is often referred to as Marvel's attempt to recreate Batman, and it is not really an exaggeration to say so. He grew up as a young man named Matt Murdock, and his life in a rough neighborhood was not easy at all. To make matters worse, he met with an accident that exposed him to radioactive substances. As a result, he was blinded, but he developed some special abilities as well. His senses were now enhanced, and they almost had a radar-like detection quality. His father was a boxer, and he was a single man struggling to raise his blind son, whom he loved unconditionally. After a rift with a gang, he was killed, and Matt Murdock was now an orphan, living on his own terms. He started to train his physical prowess, and the rigorous training also brushed up his superhuman sensory system. A mysterious blind stranger trained him, and Matt went on to become a very skilled martial artist. Soon, he graduated from law school and decided to take down the criminal elements in his locality. As a crime fighter, he gets his revenge on his father's murderers and also deals with the criminal underworld of New York City. He takes up the alter ego of Daredevil and continues his fight as a masked vigilante. He faces some mighty supervillains, such as Kingpin and Bullseye, and also conducted his affairs as a successful lawyer. Daredevil is known for his extremely enhanced senses that allow him to perceive things better than even a sighted person. His martial arts skills come in handy, and he uses a specially designed baton, which is a multi-purpose weapon. From the tragic childhood to growing up as an orphan against all odds and becoming a crime fighter, the similarities with Batman are plenty. If you explore more about this character and his story arcs, we can bet that you will not be disappointed. The Black Fox. Here is a superhero who does not rely on his superpowers, and instead uses his brilliant mind and incredible wealth to get things done. He also has amazing combat skills that help him fight crime without superpowers. If this doesn't sound a bit too much like Batman, we don't know what does. The Black Fox was clearly an attempt to bask in the glory of Batman and reach out to the fans, but we have to say that it wasn't the most disappointing effort. Black Fox was featured in the comic series titled Marvel: The Lost Generation, and his original name was Dr. Robert William Payne. He was born in the early 20th century in the fictional town of Foxwood Farms and served as a spy during the Second World War. After his glories in the war, he was motivated to establish his crime-fighting identity as the Black Fox. After the death of his lady love at the hands of a vampire villain named Nocturne, he truly took up his crime-fighting efforts seriously. After a very successful career, he retired and taught law and history at a university. He did come out of retirement one time, fought against the extraterrestrial race of the Skrulls, where he was killed in action. Overall, this is a criminally underrated character, and despite his similarities with the Batman, there is no denying the impactful presence of the Black Fox. Dark Claw. What happens when Batman merges with Wolverine? Well, you get the Dark Claw of the Amalgam Universe. His name is Logan Wayne, in case the characteristics were not enough proof, and he also has features of Superman and Captain America fused into him. He watched his parents being killed in front of his eyes, and he went on to live with his uncle in Canada. After his uncle was murdered by poachers, he was sent to live in a home run by some nuns. Once he was old enough, Logan Wayne joined the Canadian Air Force and later participated in the Weapon X project. Here, adamantium was added to his bones, and metamutant nature came to the fore. His companion, Creed Quinn, who went into the project as well, turned insane and later became his arch-rival. While Logan retained his conscience, he could not be used as a weapon, and instead, he became a crime fighter. He trained his fighting skills to become the best, and also studied certain forms of healing arts. He had accelerated healing abilities, and he could even regenerate organs after they got damaged. His sensory facilities worked like magic, and he also had the signature claws infused with adamantium, which was a great weapon. It could cut just about anything, and his kicks and punches were extremely lethal. He was also suitably cunning, and quite capable of strategizing wisely to outwit his enemies. The costume and appearance were a mix of Batman and Wolverine, and this character certainly deserved more attention than the creators chose to allot. The Shroud. This one looks so much like Batman at times that the readers got confused if this is actually the Dark Knight himself. The Shroud went by the name Maximilian Coleridge, and when he was a child, he saw his parents shot down before his eyes. His path was very similar to that of Batman, and besides studying law in college, he also trained with an expert to enhance his fighting skills. He developed a connection with the mystical Dark Force dimension, and it caused him to lose his eyesight. However, he developed a special psychic sight, which was more than useful. Interestingly enough, his story arc has changed quite drastically over the years. The Shroud who started out as a crime-fighting vigilante is not the same that you see now. Over time, his mental stability became questionable, and he even walked down the villain road towards the latter part of his life. While much about the character has been influenced by Batman, the change in his story arc is certainly quite original. While these are some of the primary Batman clones that come to mind, there are a few others who are just as effective. We certainly believe that the versatility of Batman offers enough room for other similar characters to flourish if the storylines are good enough. Do let us know in the comments below which one among the above, according to you, should be explored more. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.